This is Sacha Pradyuman of Cirrus Research. Our latest quarterly outlook is just out. It's called a dispatch. The title, Speculation to Run with Tail Risk in the Making. Our risk appetite, the US risk appetite measure, has been accelerating in the last year. What's important to take from this is that this reading, while it's climbing, has not reached some extreme speculative level, even though the market feels that way. And this is important because this tends to be a contra signal. So at some point here, as some of the good news with this sort of like a credit backdrop, earnings backdrop continues to run its course, we could easily see this sort of risk taking maybe accelerate further. Importantly, the other, let's say, returns generation story here, AI spending is accelerating. Importantly, we've argued that it is broadening into the downstream players, such as data centers, such as alternate energy, cybersecurity, etc. In fact, year to date, what we're showing is that the downstream beneficiaries are outperforming the upstream, namely the chips, or let's just say NVIDIA. At the heart of this, though, with, let's say, data centers up 24%, the nuclear bin that we've built up 32%, cybersecurity names up 36%, while the chips area very strong, but it's up about 16%. This is very telling because it does suggest that firms now finally agree that the rollout of AI applications are real, and they're starting to spend on the infrastructure or the plumbing for this environment. So we think this is the part of the speculative markets that's allowing things to run further, especially if the immediate period there is support. Importantly, in terms of tail risk forming, there are two parts to this. One is intra-market signals. Market crowding is extreme. In other words, we are really driving into a handful of names. Some of the downstream beneficiaries may temper this a bit, but the bottom line is the type of earnings growth we're seeing are coming from just one very narrow sector of the economy. So this portends some challenge ahead. That said, could things run further? Yes, with this sort of supportive interest rate backdrop, our risk appetite not sort of hitting some extremes yet, we have probably still a few chapters. Importantly, the active results, especially in large cap growth, these are our active large cap blends on the growth side. They're all struggling, especially in the last few months, as the market really went headlong into a very narrow band of exposures. I suspect this will continue to as this speculative run reaches. The mid and smaller cap active blends, they seem to be holding their own. And I think part of that is that the rest of the system is a broader market. Importantly, the second signal that concerns us is the fear of inflation. And what's interesting is with this rally we've seen from the initial correction this year, what has not changed is really the term premium backing up. In other words, the yield curve has steepened. It is suggesting that to some degree, there is more concern for inflation on the back end. This is ultimately the sort of wet blanket on the speculative run in equity, something that we're going to watch very carefully in terms of the inflation data. Finally, when we're looking now at global markets, it is really curious that we've seen a real sort of flip-flop of leadership. The US last year, this is the x-axis, was up over 20%. Beating out most key markets in the world. Take a look at the year to date for 2025. What we're seeing is that most of these markets, that's the y-axis, are ahead of where the US is. Some of this, I believe, has to do with the sort of concerns on the inflationary growth that may be coming from the US. Some of it is also fundamental in nature. These extreme runs that we've seen, the US markets have priced to perfection. That's opened this sort of valuation gap to some historical levels. To some degree, the global investors looking to diversify may be looking to stem some valuation risk, and that's what's also sort of catapulting these other markets. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you.